Can you all hear me? Including the back? Anybody asleep after awesome lunch? No? Raise your hand if you're sleepy. All right, get up then. Everybody stand up. Come on. There's one sleepy guy in the audience. We can't get started. Come on. They can all thank you for getting up. Say hi to your neighbor and introduce yourself. All right. After that embarrassing social moment, I think everybody's awake, so you can sit down. As you can see, my superpower is not jokes, but I try. So, welcome to this talk. But before we get started, I want to thank the organizers of this conference. I think it's been a great conference. It's a great venue, and I've done some conferences myself, so I know how much hard work it is. And sometimes you literally have to give an arm and a leg to make it happen. And that's especially true this year. So please join me in giving a big hand for all the organizers, especially the one that is suffering some injuries today. So please give a big hand to the organization team. But we're not here today to talk about conferences and how to organize conferences. We're here today to talk about superpowers. And more specifically, how each and every one of us have a superpower. I think that's a very powerful concept. Most of us just don't know what it is. We haven't discovered it yet. I found it very pivotal moment in my life when I realized what my superpower is, and I hope I can do that to some of you today. So how many of you like superheroes? They're pretty awesome, right? You're not really a geek unless you like superheroes. Is anybody wearing superhero outfit? T-shirt, anything? I am. Yeah. I have to say I prefer Batman to Superman, but that's a different talk. Today, we're going to talk about a different superhero. Me. So my name is Jay. Currently, I work as a development director at Wargaming. And I have a privilege of being part of a team of superheroes where we each have a unique superpower. And because we have a superpower that is different than the other people in the team, that makes the team stronger than its parts. That's an important concept that I'll go to later. But the majority of this talk is actually an origin story. Like any good superhero franchise, it starts with an origin story. So this is going to be an origin story of Jay, the superhero. There's many reasons why superheroes are cool and why we love them. First of all, they come in various shapes and sizes and skin colors, just like us humans. They all have unique strengths and weaknesses, just like we do. But that doesn't make a superhero yet. What makes a superhero is what's inside them. Because just like the superheroes, the villains also have superpowers. They also come in various shapes and sizes. Therefore, it's important to remember when you start flexing your superhero muscles that you have to use them for good. Not just for selfish reasons, but also for the benefit of others around you. That's what makes you a hero, not the power itself. Why are they so inspirational to us? Why, especially as children, we are drawn to these characters? I think all that I mentioned is valid, but I think there's more. I think it's a very core of being a human to wonder why are we here, what's the meaning of life? And for superheroes, they have a very clear, distinct mission and goal and reason for existence. And that's very inspirational for children. Most of us have probably dreamed of being superheroes when we were children, especially when we were bullied or we saw somebody close to us getting bullied and we couldn't do anything about it. Those are the moments that stay with you. But to my favorite subject, me. Like I promised, this is an origin story. And it starts at a company called Sumea, which later became Digital Chocolate. I started off as a programmer. I wasn't very good at it, to be honest, especially not against all the superstars that I was with, some really good programmers there. So I became a one-man team. I was the producer, I was the programmer, the business-to-business guy, the designer, everything. I did everything except art and audio because I suck even more at those than I do in programming. And eventually I became a producer. And my career has been on that track ever since. The teams have grown, the games have grown, the challenges have grown. But essentially it's been the same sort of track of leadership. But a trend emerged in those early days at Sumea that I didn't like at all. I started to get all the toughest projects. There was also always some limiting factor, whether it was the schedule, the budget, the resources, whatever it was. I always had the tough gigs. And I hated it, absolutely hated it. The fellow producers, they got the cool projects where they have all the time in the world and they have time to iterate and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and make the game as good as it could be. I often had the projects that we just had to ship them. Some of them were good, all of them shipped, but I didn't like it at one bit. What I didn't realize at the time, and for many, many years after, was that that's the first glimpse that you could see of my emerging superpowers. I just did what came instinctively to me. I didn't realize what I was doing. I just did how I work. And maybe others didn't realize it quite themselves either, but somehow they put me in roles where my superpowers could have the maximum impact. And that brings me to a very important point. You have to have the right tool for the right job. And that's one of the reasons why you need to figure out what your superpower is. Because if you figure out what your superpower is, you can put yourself in positions where you can actually take full advantage of it. Now, you wouldn't put Deadpool over here into a UN peace conference trying to come up with a stable solution for the Middle East. That would probably be a train wreck, right? But we see it in our working lives every day. At least I have. When I see that guy who can walk into a room full of strangers and start making contacts and connections and build a huge network out of it without breaking a sweat, we make that guy be the producer for our game, which is all about selfless leadership and bringing enough order into the chaos of creative game development. Those are completely different skill sets, completely different mindsets. And it's naive for us to believe that one person could do those both roles. I've seen the great facilitators become the leaders. They've been great at second in command, but when they become leaders, they lack the assertiveness to actually make decisions. I've seen great starters trying to finish projects, and I've seen great closers trying to get new projects off the ground to equally bad results. And I've seen the bulldozers and the bulldogs put into situations which are politically sensitive. And it's like literally the proverbial elephant in the China store when you look at the results. So you have to have the right tool for the right job. The other important concept is that every superpower comes with a flip side. For every Jedi, there's a Sith. For Superman, there's kryptonite, and some would argue his arrogance. And for Hulk, it's pretty obvious. It's the raging green monster. The whole character of Bruce Banner is this conflict between his understanding that humanity needs his power. They need that green beast to be unleashed. But he personally struggles with the fact that once he does that, that raging goes out of control, and he's afraid of the collateral damage that will cause. And the loss of self, he loses himself at this process. Anybody who's ever worked with me knows there's a little bit of Hulk in me on occasion. So, how is a fledgling superhero, in this case me, but also you, gonna be able to leverage that superpower without letting that green monster consume them and lose themselves in the process. Often it comes in the form of mentor. Everybody loves Wolverine. That's probably usually the favorite X-Men character. But I would argue that the most important character in X-Men is actually the Professor. He's the one who puts together the team. He's the one who finds these young mutants and helps them, guides them, nurtures them so that they can leverage their superpowers and they can control that dark side so that they can actually accomplish the goals. In their case, usually saving the world. In our case, shipping a good game. I've been lucky in my career and I've had those mentors, a few of them at least, early in my career, and they've been tremendously helpful. They've gotten me on the right path. But even though I've had those mentors, they never really explained to me, they never really told me what my superpower is. Or maybe they did and I didn't listen. But the end result was that I didn't really realize what that superpower was. I was just instinctively using it for years. It wasn't until after 15 years in this industry that I finally got my superhero name. It's pretty awesome, right? Who doesn't want to be the missile that finishes things? So I liked it, didn't mind it, seemed to caught on. Everybody in my team started using it. All these other superheroes calling me the finished missile. But I didn't realize where that name is coming from. I just thought it was like a funny joke, haha, and kind of cool name. And it wasn't until somebody I really trusted helped to reveal to myself my secret superhero identity. Now, I don't remember the exact words, so I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something like this. Jay, I know you think you're hard to manage, but you're not. In fact, you're super easy to manage. All I have to do is set a goal for you and get the hell out of the way. And I know for certainty that you will deliver. I have no doubt about that. You will always deliver. As long as I don't mind sometimes getting little collateral damage along the way. And I was like, huh? I'd known this guy for over 10 years. I worked in this industry over 15 years. Nobody, including the several mentors I had, nobody had ever mentioned this to me. At least in a way that I would have heard it myself. Maybe I just wasn't ready to hear that message. Maybe I just wasn't listening until that moment. So that became a pivotal moment for me, and that's why I want to talk about this. Because that really changed the way I think about my career, about what sort of jobs and assignments and roles I want to do in the future, so that I can leverage that superpower and control that weakness. So I went around in this superhero team of ours, and I went around and asked. And the answer was uniformly similar. Duh. Well, of course. Dude, everybody knows that. That's your superpower. But they never told me that. None of them ever actually told me that, at least in a way that I would have heard. And it's because it's so obvious to them that this is my superpower. It's in everything I do, they can see that. So obviously they assume that I know it as well, because how could I not? Everybody else does. But apparently, I was the last person to let in on the joke. Luckily, I can say no kissing was involved in this unveiling of the superhero, so that's good. No sexual harassment suits or anything. Which brings me back to the earlier point about the right tool. Once you identify that superpower, you're going to have to figure out how you can position yourself in a way to use it in the correct task, the current goal, the current assignment. Just like a world leader, at least a morally just world leader, shouldn't send a Tomahawk missile into a wedding party to kill one terrorist, He should rather find the isolated terrorist camp where he can do the same thing with 0 civilian casualties, or at least minimize those casualties. Same way, you have to look at where do you leverage your superpower so that you can actually accomplish your goals and minimizing that collateral damage that comes from that raging green monster within you. But enough ego-boosting bullshit about myself. Let's talk about you. How can you all find your superpower? The first step is recognizing it. And I would argue that you are probably in a similar situation than I was. The people around you already know what your superpower is. All you have to do is trust them and ask them and really listen. That's the hardest part. Really listen, because that feedback could be harsh. It could change the way you look at yourself, and it could change the trajectory of your career and the focus of what you're doing. But if you'd really listen, that's your best bet to be both successful and happy in life, because you're doing something that comes naturally to you and you don't fight against who you really are. The second step is actually using it. What good is it if you're not using it? So this is taking those hard decisions and changing your life so that you're in a position to use that superpower, and hopefully that weakness that comes with that superpower isn't as significant as it has in some other role. And hopefully you all remember that the purpose is to be a superhero, not a supervillain. So no stealing bikes from little kids, okay? Third step is to team up. Just like we naturally often do, but now you can do it consciously. Team up with people that have different superpowers than you do, and your team is going to be stronger than its parts. But you can go further than that. You can actually make sure that they know what your superpower is by telling them, and hopefully they'll also trust you and you understand better their superpowers and weaknesses. That way you can cover each other's weaknesses and you can combine your superpowers. But there's even more important relationship, at least in your working life, than your colleagues in your team, and that's your boss. If your boss understands your superpower and your weakness, he can make sure to put you in roles and assignments where you can excel. You, your boss, and your organization will be more successful and happier if you're doing something which takes full advantage of your superpower and negates as much as possible of that weakness that comes with every superpower. And finally, once you discover this, you teamed up with other superheroes, you have to develop yourself from here until eternity. And when you're developing yourself, you should focus on that superpower. By pushing that superpower as far as you can, that's your best guarantee, that's your best bet to be successful. Too many people focus on correcting the weaknesses and they never reach their full potential. But it's not an either-or situation. It's both and. You have to find the way to focus your development on driving your superpower and at the same time mitigating your weakness, at least enough that it's not totally crippling your ability to accomplish anything. If you can do this, I am pretty sure you're going to have a more successful career and you're going to be happier in life. As a parting thought, you can apply this same concept to others. If you look at your team, the people around you and the people reporting to you, you need to develop those people as well. And you can use the same concept to focus their developments and drive their careers. Because remember, you want to be superheroes, and that's about the selfish acts that benefit others, not just your own career. Thank you.
Thank you. We have plenty of time for questions. Anybody have questions? Okay, I have a question for you.
I have one more thing that I want to mention, since there's no questions. I mentioned I also arrange conferences. There's a conference called 4C happening later this year. The announcement hasn't made public yet, but here amongst friends, I can tell you that it's going to be in Prague, in Czech Republic, in early October. There's the link to the website, and it still has last year's information, but it will soon be updated, hopefully later this week, if not by the end of the month. There will be a call for speakers, as well as call for track owners. I'm searching for people who are going to be judging those speakers and building the program together with me, as well as people to speak on that program. If none of those interest you, you can always join us as an attendee. It should be a great event. If you want to get in touch with me, there's my LinkedIn, or you can come and talk to me after the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, and question for me. So regarding your superpower, what's the best team size for you? Like, what team size do you feel most comfortable to work with? Is there any preferences at all?
No, not really. I think the key point is that a highly charged political situation where you have to tiptoe around people's egos and stuff is probably not the best environment for me. I'm about getting shit done. And yes, sometimes there's collateral damage. Usually they are people who don't have the same work ethic or something like that. One of my mentors said that I don't suffer fools lightly. Another mentor of mine said that I'm being unfair to people because I expect the same dedication and motivation from them as I have myself, and that's not unfair towards others, which was a weird thing to say to my mind, but I guess it's true. So I think that's more defining factor than team size.
Okay, and one more, last one for me. How did you find your mentors, like throughout your professional life?
My mentors have actually been my bosses. I developed a good relationship with several of my bosses. I also had a really shitty relationship with some of my bosses. And the best relationship ended up in mentorship relationships, which lasted beyond that professional life. So even though we departed ways in terms of companies, we maintained close friendship and shared ideas and grew together.